Welcome to our sixth video in this orientation series for structured process improvement. We're now going to turn and talk about improving work through Kaizen, or what's known as PDCA, or the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. So many of you probably were not familiar with standardized Do, Check, Act, which is the initial daily management process used in Japan, but you're more familiar with the improvement process that's used when they make changes to the standardized cycle. And this is called Plan, Do, Check, Act. So three topics we'll talk about. What is Kaizen? You've heard the term, so we'll go into that just a little bit. What is the incremental step-by-step Kaizen journey? So what does it mean by doing Kaizen? And then how do SDCA and PDCA relate to this Kaizen journey? Well, first of all, what is Kaizen? So Kaizen is a continuous act of improvement. It's seeking ways to make performance better in all aspects of work: quality, cost, safety, productivity, decision making. And so there's three steps. First is beginning with this out of control. So we see this out of control, high variation condition, like we saw on the Shewhart control chart. And then we see the process is stabilized. The extremes of the variation are dampened or reduced. And then the third phase is we go into improvement, where the average level performance is shifted up and the variation is further reduced in the process. So these are the three phases, if you will, that we would go through at the very beginning of a process to standardize and improve performance based on statistical review and analysis. So basically, we see that the Kaizen is incrementally improving a process by a continual effort to make work perform better as we measure it. It moves from an out of control condition to a state of statistical control. And when we start taking a look at this, we start seeing that we're first of all going on a step-by-step walk of what Miyamoto Musashi called the 1,000-mile road. It's a long-term journey. It's not a sprint. And so we go through a process of eliminating waste, and then we standardize the work, and then we keep going through incremental cycles of continual improvement. So first we identify waste and its obvious causes. So waste causes process upsets and keeps work from flowing smoothly. And if we control and eliminate, that's where we start. Then we standardize a process to begin the improvement journey. So this is moving from one project to another, and we increase the capability in terms of how we manage our work. So this is this SDCA cycle, standardized, do, check, act. And we talked about this before in terms of what we have to do. And there's two jobs of the workers: to do the work and then to improve the work. So doing the work is like a checklist item. Have you actually done what you need to do? That's the standard work. Improving the work is the Kaizen incremental activity, where we make projects that will increase the capability of that process over time. So basically, approximately 90% of their time should be spent in the do check cycle, and only 10% in the act standardized cycle. So the idea is that we are doing the productive output in the do check cycle, and performance actually of the do cycle is what gets most of the productivity work. So we see three steps happening here. First, we are understanding and documenting. So we talked about this earlier, how we go through the process with a Gemba walk, and we are reducing fear of change by involving the employees, getting them to be a part of the team that's managing and creating the change concepts. We have a process of rationalization, understanding the different components of the process work and how they contribute variation, and then documenting the work. And this also is used to establish the measurement system. So all of that is step one. After we've done that, step two is to simplify. And by this, we mean getting rid of defects, waste, and cost in the process that we've been able to discover because of the documentation we've done and the measurement system we've done. That's basically the process that it would be done in many lean types of projects. The third step is optimize. And it's how do we decide what's going to be right for the future? So we're going to set priorities. We'll think about this and what resources we can apply or decision rights to implement change in the future. This can include automation, it can include new IT systems, it can include re-engineered processes, and so forth. So what we see is this is the first three steps: understand, document, simplify. These are the three cycles that we talked about before. Now, what we see is, though, that the change happens at this check step. Now, we will talk about these work elements. So in this SDCA cycle, the do step begins with Siri Sitan, and then it goes to Sisu. The act step is Seketsu or Kaizen, and the standardized step is Shitsuki or Kiyoshi. So we can talk about each of those in different ways, but at the check step, we have a question we have to ask. And the question is, do we need to change? Or do we need to continue? If everything is okay, we go back to do. If there's a problem, the question is, do we have the budget to make the change happen? If it's within our natural budget to actually fix this, then the team can do it. The second question that has to be answered positively is, do we have the decision rights to make the change? So we have to have resources and decision rights, and if so, then the act of adjustment is possible. If not, then we have to initiate the project. And so in the Gemba 2 organization, this is the management team, the supervisor and above, we have the process of managing projects for breakthroughs. And here the job of the supervisor is to train the workers and to manage the flow. Now, what we see is that in SDCA and PDCA, this check step is crucial. Do we have control? Do we have sufficient resources? So check is basically a pivot point in the process between standardization and change management. Standardization, SDCA, change management, PDCA. And so what happens is we evaluate performance, we have reflection, we think back, what could we do differently? We do problem solving based on the measures. We'll conduct some small experiments to understand what could be done or what happens if we try other things. And we make some decisions about where we're going to go. Can we do it or not? If we can do it in the frontline organization, then we can. If, however, the answer is no, then the improvement may require escalation for more budget, more resources, specialists, and so forth, and that becomes escalated by the supervisor to the next level as a project to be initiated using PDCA. Now, I think it's interesting that Taiichi Ono, before he passed away, he was talking about how the Toyota production system is still not perfect, and more development is needed on what he called fine adjustments. And he says, this fine adjustment has hidden meaning, and we have to understand it, especially by top management. Everyone knows everything doesn't go according to plan, but there are people in the world who recklessly try to force a schedule, even though they know it may be impossible. They'll say it's good to follow the plan, or it's good to follow the schedule. It's a shame to change the plan. And they'll do anything to make it work. But as long as we cannot accurately predict the future, our action should change to suit situations. In industry, it's important to enable production people to cope with change and think flexibly. Or as he says, wait for the right opportunity. And so the final step is going to this strategic quality. We are shifting them from the SDCA cycle and developing standard work to a strategic quality approach, which is managed through projects. And these projects are going to be, if you will, generated and approved by management and at different levels. So the PDCA projects basically are approved either in Gemba 1 or Gemba 2, the workplace or the unit, business unit. And so they don't go to the level of the corporate level, the enterprise. Those are what we call Hoshin projects. But this type of strategic quality is around the optimization. And so what we see is that there's 3 steps here. The understand document is standardizing a process. Simplify is about Kaizen or continual improvement. And this optimization is where we start talking about new technologies, new directions, and we're talking about transformation of the organization. So what can you do about waste observations? Well, we can make change for the better. So Kaizen means to improve for the better. And this is basically the result of gaining profound knowledge, getting the insights into how processes connect to each other with measures, and that drives the particular results we observe. We don't want change for the worse. This is called Kai-Aku, and this is a result of profane knowledge, doing things we've always done, legacy thinking. So Kai-Aku basically is following our same old way of doing things and expecting a different result. So we have definitely a desire for Kaizen. And together, we drive the transformation. So Taiichi Ono said, unless we completely change how we think, there's a limit to what we can accomplish by continuing our same thinking. We have to change our way. And in this, we see that the leader's job is to maintain the constant intent to affect improvement everywhere in the organization. Not to let people off the hook and say, well, that's good enough, we don't have to go further, but to understand where do we need to improve and where do we need to improve next. The worker's job is to constantly seek concrete opportunities to improve the work that they routinely perform. So the workers should be then telling us, where can we make a difference? Which projects should we be able to do? And what can we do about them to reduce the variation and the waste that we see in those processes? So, some team activity for you. Daiichi Ono advises not to start standardization by waiting for a perfect standard to evolve, but to make a choice about what is believed to be good enough and then keep encouraging it to be better by making small improvements in incremental steps or in these small steps with learning occurring after each experiment. So we learn step by step and gradually keep making the process better. Where can you begin to standardize your work? What can be done better? How you know that improvement has occurred? How will you follow this UDSO sequence to move from initial Gemba walk to the SDCA to a PDCA? These are the questions that you have to pursue because this is going to be your local learning process for implementing Kaizen in your own work areas. So what will be the first team standard that you agree to develop and use then for your driving improvement in your organization? So take that next step and then see how can you move forward to guide improvement in your own work processes. Thank you.